Real excited about our next speaker. We have the opportunity to hear from John Clavadetscher. John Clavadetscher is this is a great title, CRO of Cars.com. As Chief Revenue Officer, I love that title, for Cars.com, John oversees the company's national, affiliate, local, direct, major account business, which includes managing strategic relationships with more than 20,000 local auto dealers and partners with national dealer groups. John is responsible for setting the sales, customer acquisition, and service strategy, ensuring the company meets aggressive revenue and retention goals. He currently oversees a team of 600 Cars.com employees. Prior to being named CRO, John served as Vice President of Sales and also held positions as Director of Affiliate Sales and Dealer Product Development. He joined Cars.com in 1999. John received a bachelor's degree in American Studies from Georgetown University, graduating Phi Beta Kappa. He was also a member of a Division I varsity crew team, traveling and competing internationally. A quick search online turned up the following. Here we see John, he's looking good, got the whole Cars background thing happening. Here we see John, this is his crew team. This is a Division I crew team. I thought they'd have matching uniforms. Here we see John. I'm not sure what's going on here. It appears to me that John is actually the love child of Bill Nye the Science Guy. When he dies, he pledged to leave his body to science fiction. Please give a warm, Innovative Dealers Summit welcome to John Clavadetscher.
Thank you, Mike. That was great.
My pleasure. Welcome, welcome. Big green button.
Great. All right. Good morning. Another quick round of applause for both David and Mark O'Neill. They did a great job of kicking us off. Fantastic. At Cars.com, we have two core passions for the people that work with Cars.com. First and foremost, we have an undying passion for consumers and helping consumers win. And the second is to help local dealers win. And I reflect on that last piece, helping local dealers win. It reminds me of how blessed we all are, and you all are, to be part of the CADA, and how Tim Jackson's done a great job of really helping everyone in the state of Colorado at a local dealership win. So Tim, it's an honor to be here. Congratulations on what a great venue, so thank you. All right. Who here is a Colorado Rockies fan? Right, raise your hand. I know opening day is a couple days away, so that's exciting. I know it's a big party for you, opening day, and we should have great weather. I myself am a Cubs fan. Any Cubs fans here? I know it's there's a few. Oh, Mike, there you go, Cubs fan. Any St. Louis Cardinals fans here today? All right, so we got a couple Cardinals fans. So my goals today, talk a little bit about baseball, but specifically talk baseball as it relates to new ways of thinking and relate it to the dealer community. And then lastly, wrap it up into what Mark O'Neill talked about and what some of the speakers talked about yesterday in terms of transparency and trust. But baseball. From 1945 until last year, the Cubs, which represented on the left, were one of the worst teams in baseball. I contrast that to one of the best teams in baseball during this time period, the St. Louis Cardinals. Now, I use the year 1945 is because that was the same year that the great painter Norman Rockwell painted in the Sunday Post, The Lovable Losers, which dictated the Chicago Cubs' futility from 1908 to 1945. Norman Rockwell would be amazed, even though he coined the Cubs Lovable Losers, that it would be another 82 years before the Chicago Cubs actually won again. And we're going to get into how they won, but importantly, we're going to talk about the parallels between their successes and the successes of successful local dealers. To give a little context, and I think everyone's aware the Cubs did win this last year, the previous year was 1908, and it's important to reflect on all the changes in at least American society and somewhat the world since 1908. First and foremost, actually, sliced bread was actually created after the last time the Cubs won. The sliced bread was like 1922. You can see we landed a man on the moon. We created all the other sports franchises. What's not listed here is Henry Ford himself created Ford in 1908. And what I learned from Mike and from Tim a couple days ago is that the CADA started in 1902, or a little before actually this time period. Just to sort of date it, you can also see television was invented before the last time the Cubs won the World Series. Now, in traveling around and talking to so many local successful dealers, we often hear, well, the other dealer down the road is a little bit more successful because they have money. And when I hear that, we are trained to talk more about processes, and we're going to get into that, because you can see when the Ricketts family acquired the Cubs in 2009, the Cubs had the third highest payroll at $140 million. The third highest payroll, but they had the third worst record in baseball. So oftentimes it's not about money and just spending money, it's about spending money effectively, and then we're going to talk about some of the key areas. So Tom Verducci wrote The Cubs Way. It's a great book. It's actually a great management book that talks about some of the key processes that are applicable to our business and our industry. But I can save you the time and actually the money and break down their themes into 4 key areas and then relate this back to the automotive industry. First and foremost, what the Ricketts family did is they hired great leaders. So in this case, Theo Epstein. Theo Epstein helped resurrect the Boston Red Sox career. Arguably, he's a first ballot Hall of Fame, one of the greatest leaders. Fortune magazine actually rated him one of the top 10 leaders of all time this past year. And you can actually see he was the youngest GM, first World Series win with the Boston Red Sox. And if you combine the actual streaks that he broke both in Boston and in Cubs, it encompasses almost 200 years of futility that his leadership brought. Now, Theo, and having met him and spoken to him a few times, would be the first to say it's not him. He's hired a great team. And as we think through dealerships, oftentimes when you look at the most successful dealerships, it's having a great team of people. Team of challengers, team of people that will try new ideas, that will push back and really try to attain the common goal. So a lot of parallels between great dealerships and what the Cubs accomplished. This is important. When the Ricketts family bought the Cubs for $880 million in 2009, the first thing they did was actually invest another $1 billion into the facilities. The facilities in spring training in Arizona, the facilities at Wrigley Field, and then throughout the organization, they built a state-of-the-art facility in the Dominican Republic. So the first thing they did is invest into the facilities. But when I look around some of the most successful dealerships, they too invest significantly in their facilities. And traveling around both earlier yesterday, some of the great facilities that you all built are beautiful, and they reflect the goals that you want to accomplish with your teams and with your customers. I think it's also important to note that another key aspects of the Cubs way is the processes. And Theo, when he took over the Cubs, realized that in the various different layers within the organization, so you have sort of Major League Baseball at the top, you have various different minor League A and AA, AAA, you would have different coaches that had different philosophies on how to pitch, how to hit, different strategies on how to win baseball. And what they did, they being Theo, he codified what the goals are and the processes are so that everyone throughout the organization were on the same page of what we're trying to accomplish. What's the right way to stand in this batter's box and throw the baseball? And I think that's important because, again, it reflects the opportunity for us in our industry to really have standardized processes and ensuring that our employees all know what sort of pages that we're on. So invest in great leaders, invest in facilities, and invest in great processes. This last piece I think is critical, and attribution was talked a lot both yesterday and it'll be talked about again today, but this is where I think as a business we're at the tipping point. I get really excited about what we will do in the automotive industry, and it reflects what baseball did in 2003. Who here has read Michael Lewis's or seen the movie Moneyball? Right, raise your hand. So the vast majority, I'm sure. And so in that, it really dictates, it dictates the art of winning an unfair game. And really, when you think through what Moneyball did, and Billy Beane, the person that was the GM of the Oakland A's, and I'm sure a lot of people here have met Billy Beane, he realized that he had the lowest payroll, so he had to look at attribution, he had to look at metrics, he had to look at success slightly differently. Baseball is a 120-year, 30-year-old sport, but yet for most of that 120 years, when scouts and managers and leaders looked at baseball players, they really used dated metrics. They used metrics like, does he look like a baseball player? They also use metrics such as batting average, but last year's batting average, or ERA, which is a pitcher's metric, but last year's ERA. Again, they didn't not use data, but they used the wrong data, and they came to the wrong conclusions based on that wrong data. So what Billy Beane did in 2003, he realized that he had to be unfair. He couldn't just throw money at it. So he used new metrics that were always around but never really used. And when I like to look at those metrics, I call them outcome-based metrics. So he used on-base percentages, pitches per at-bat, slugging percentages, and wins above replacement. And importantly, going back to the processes, he really ensured that everyone through the organization understood these are the metrics that we are judging and grading our players on, and this is what we're focusing on, this is what we're teaching, and making sure everyone's on the same page. And with that, Theo Epstein and what he did with Boston Red Sox were a great success, but he was able to quickly turn around the Cubs, which arguably, since Norman Rockwell coined them in 1945, were represented and epitomized futility. You can see as they started to improve year after year. In the last 2 years, they're the only Major League Baseball team to have 200 combined wins. And you can see they not only won 103, which is the most in Major League Baseball, but they also went on to win the World Series. I think this is important as it relates to our business, as it relates to the Colorado Dealer Association, because if you look at the amount of money spent in advertising, it is at a record level last year, $37.5 billion. Billion dollars was spent in advertising between Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. And I would argue that the vast majority of it is using and has used old metrics to define what success looked like. You were like that baseball club in 2000 that was looking at batting average last year, or if you had a chiseled jawline and determine if you're going to be successful on the baseball field. A vast majority of those dollars are spent not looking at what outcomes are in mind. This becomes more important as you reflect on what both Mark O'Neill talked about and others yesterday, is that SAR is relatively going to be flat over the next couple years, so we have to be more effective and efficient to be competitive in a growingly competitive marketplace. Now, this data reflects how the community, the dealer community, has shifted their dollars to go where the consumers are. You can see back in 2003, only 5% of a dealer's budget was invested in digital or internet, right? I know we have a handful of people and friends that I've known since then that were really the vanguards of really understanding the digital aspects. You could see the dramatic change in a relatively short period of time in 2016 that now 66% of the dealer Tier 3 dollars are invested digitally. But I'm going to argue that the vast majority of it is still based on metrics that are not outcome metrics. In fact, eMarketer last year stated that over 55% of a dealer's digital budget is on SEM, paid search, or display, and most of that is reflective of old metrics, dated metrics. So the next part of this conversation is tying it back into the excitement of what the industry is going to do as it relates to new metrics. So as you reflect what you and your dealership is optimizing for, think through as you equate providers, whether it's Autotrader.com, Cars.com, TrueCar, are you judging us on email and phone calls? Are you judging us on the newer metrics in terms of dealer visits or importantly on sales? I had the opportunity 2 weeks ago to go to one of the larger publicly traded dealer groups, and as they reflect on attribution, they do not even look at what's in their CRM in terms of email as in judging advertising providers in the digital space. They do not even look at that. What they've done and created is they've created just a turn model. And they look to see what's the predictive turn per every used car and new car on the lot, and they continually do A/B testing by putting inventory on sites like Autotrader, Cars.com, or others, and they figure out what provides the best ROI. That's just a new way that some of your competitors are looking at attribution, and if you are caught in just looking at what's in your CRM, as I know Darren Hager talked about yesterday in his breakout session, you may be victim of falling behind the times. So Denver Nuggets having a very good year. As you look at attribution, oftentimes what attribution historically has been what I call sort of the NBA basketball pass. And actually I'm not much of a sports person, so I apologize for all the sports references here. But I will say that in the NBA, one person gets an assist. Now if I do a show of hand, if you think that the average consumer just goes to one site to find their information, or somewhat even more controversial, that they prefer to go to a dealer site as the only site, sure you won't see many people raise their hand. But yet as you look at your marketing effectiveness and what's most efficient in your CRMs, the vast majority of customers are still like that baseball scout in 2002 looking at the jawline and looking at last year's batting average. It's being driven by single source, last click, Google Analytics, and it's important to really talk about and continue to stress in the trade and in the industry that a lot of the companies that are successful with CRMs or with Google Analytics best profit and generate revenue from these areas. I encourage all of our dealer partners to participate in paid search, but when you look at the vast majority of your actual allocation is on paid search, what I'm here to say is that increasingly there's a growing number of dealers that are using new data to demonstrate how to best invest in your dollars. A good best practice to sort of illustrate this point is the hospitality business. I challenge everyone here to actually go to Google and look up your favorite restaurant. Google's celebrating their 11th year as an IPO. 6 years ago, the #1 category, or one of the top 2 categories, was the hospitality. They realized that they needed to get impression share, they needed to make sure that they got the cost per click, they'd get low cost per click. But look up your favorite restaurant. They do not participate, by and large, in paid search. And they don't, and the reason why I like this analogy is that they too are entrepreneurs, they too invest in their communities, they too invest locally in terms of employing people, pay taxes, love the dealer community, love the hospitality business. But they have actually even slimmer margins. And so they're at times closer to the customer, and they too have moved away from just what is last click or single source into what drives outcomes. So the hospitality business will invest in marketplaces like an Open Table, and they will invest in reputation like in Yelp to ensure that they can influence consumers what and where, because they have gone past the last click attribution. I didn't know who Mark Pritchard was 3 months ago, and he's become a hero of mine in a short period of time, even though I've never communicated with him. Mark Pritchard is the chief brand strategist for Procter & Gamble. Procter & Gamble is the largest advertising company in the world. Actually, the automotive space, led by GM and Ford, are in the top 5, but Procter & Gamble is #1. At a convention in end of January, Mark Pritchard came up and basically lit a bomb because he said that the digital industry does not have the accountability, and that basically the school kids are grading their own papers. And he challenged the entire industry that we need to look beyond classical traditional metrics like cost per click. We also need to look at quality. It was an amazing speech. You can read about it online. And it's not lost on me that within 2 months, there's been a resurgence of what's called the Google boycott. So the British government really started this out where they boycotted advertising on YouTube as well as on Google's display network, because they said, hey, listen, as a company, when we advertise, we appreciate quality, and if you can't protect us against bad content, then we're going to hold you accountable. And importantly, they actually said when we advertise, we are endorsing the actual content that we're next to. And so if there is objectionable content that our advertisements are behind, then we can't get behind it. So in the last 2 weeks, you could see that Fortune said that the Google boycott, there's about 250 and growing companies like Toyota, companies like McDonald's and Allstate that are boycotting Google. That'll cost them $750 million this past, over the last couple of weeks. So I've had the opportunity and pleasure of giving this presentation for a while and changing it around a little bit. But what gets me super excited is that before I could sort of damn the darkness without being able to shed the light. And more so than ever, there are some leading companies that are in this room that are helping auto manufacturers franchise customers understand where to best and most effectively invest their dollars. So there's companies like Transparency, which is sponsoring this practice. We have Clairvoy, we have Steve White, the founder of that company. We have Vista Dashboard, as well as Pin Dealer Network, which is a local-based consultant company here, as well as we have both Datalogics in the back, as well as Oracle. They too are understanding and trying to get the industry to move away from single source into sort of last click. I love the photo of hockey, again, sports reference, but in hockey, it's not just one person that actually gets the assist, it's oftentimes multiple people. And in our digital world, that's the way we need to be looking at where to best invest our marketing dollars. I'm going to wrap it up by talking about trust, a conversation that both Chip Perry and Mark O'Neill, Chip Perry yesterday, Mark O'Neill this morning talked about. When you look at the success of companies like Expedia, Hotwire, Amazon could clearly be here, you will see that at the heart of that is trust. The trust that they have from consumer reviews, the trust that they have in terms of their marketplace. I know we all use sites like this or Uber, and I challenge it, as you look at your own dealer websites, you need to appreciate that when a consumer is on Travelocity or on Kayak or on Hotwire or on Amazon, they're then porting over to your site and they're making those comparisons. And so it's really important as you work with your website provider to understand that in our space that consumers don't necessarily say, okay, I'm now searching for a airline or for a trip, and now I have a great experience, or I'm on Amazon, and now I'm going to take my hat off and put on the Tier 3 dealership website hat. And so it's important to understand the content that you have there, the experiences, the speed that you have on those sites, and if you have reviews on your sites, because those are the experiences that consumers have when they do your research. Those are the experiences that you have when you do non-automotive research. And these are the companies that when we look at who we at Cars.com are competing against, and we want to make sure that we're winning with, we look at these individual companies. The companies that I listed and what we're very excited about really talk about trust. They talk about recommendations from friends and family. They talk about reviews. 82% of people, when they look to buy a big ticket item like a car, they're going to really rely primarily on friends and family, the experiences. That's why what David talked about on the service side, experience matters. But you can also see the next biggest important area in terms of trust is going to be online reviews. And it's super important as you look at your own website, as you look at where you're advertising, what is the reviews that you have. Also there you can see that mobile review ads are only at 38%. Some of the content and where you advertise, people really don't trust that. And it's super important to understand that as you place your marketing investments. At Cars.com, we were excited to acquire DealerRater. And the main point in terms of helping local dealers win is they came up with this technology that allows actually consumers to rate their own individual employees, something that they came out with at NADA in Vegas last year. When they did that, we realized it's a game changer because it's very similar to what we were studying the trends in the rental categories. Consumers not just want to figure out what and where to buy, they also want to know the from whom. And the dealerships that invest the from whom are the ones that are starting to gain share and best effectively leverage digital advertising. Lastly, as it relates to both trust and as it relates to your CRM, it's important to understand in terms of the Moneyball and sort of attribution is, are you looking at how many people are showing up on your lot? What are they doing when they're on their lot? And as it relates to, are you getting reports from Cars.com or AutoTrader and others on what kind of lot traffic? In this case, we looked at the entire state of Colorado. The average dealership in Colorado gets about 44 people that consumers that are on Cars.com mobile or actually their app that are on your dealership, that are looking for your content, looking for your information, as well as actually looking at your competitors. Now, I would say that nationwide, it's about 7 million leads per year, but none of those leads show up in your CRM. Additionally, when we do research and follow up these consumers, very few of these customers actually submit a lead or a contact that would fit into your CRM. So it's important to understand, is your advertising partner, are they driving traffic, are they content that are helping influence? We just commissioned a study with Toluna that said that as it relates to walk-in traffic, that close to 38% of walk-in traffic from Cars.com closed within 1 day, and 68% closed within 2 days. So it's important to look at attribution, and are you really optimizing and looking at your advertising spend on an email that may close at 7, 8, 9, 10%, or are you looking at it as it relates to walk-in traffic as it relates to something that can close 40% or 50, 60%. So listen, I truly appreciate and honored to be here talking to you all. And in summary, I just want to thank you very much for your time. Very excited for the opportunities and the parallels between what Theo Epstein did and what you all are doing in terms of investing in your people, investing in your facilities and your processes. I think as an industry, it's exciting to see that many dealerships are actually looking at attribution differently. And 2017 is the year that we continue to invest in great partnerships to look at how to best look at attribution, best look at most efficiently. And listen, also I want to thank you very much for your time. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mike. Thank you.
Fantastic job. Give it up for John Clavadetscher. Some incredible stuff there. Appreciate it, John. The I love this analogy that at baseball, you think of all the baseball metrics, but they were using the wrong metrics. And we've heard that message repeated a couple of times today.